the World Cup of World Cups, Episode 14, Part 2, Italia 90, The Knockouts.
Anyone with the first name Dragan is just a badass immediately.
If you've got the initials KKK, you're living in a 1,000-year-old German castle. That is
I
to the point.
imagine he is an intense lover.
It's that old Andy Warhol quote, in the future everyone will be famous for 15 minutes for managing Watford.
World War I German helmets would have been perfect to keep cabbage on.
This will play well in West Africa.
Into the round of 16. Cameroon-Colombia is 0-0 until the second period of extra time when...
Roger Miller.
He scores twice in 3 minutes. Do you remember his second goal?
Yes. Rene Higuita tries to be a little bit too... not even clever, just reckless.
He's titting around on the halfway line for no reason. What are you doing? You're a goalkeeper. Get back there.
And Higuita's got himself into trouble, and it is no surprise.
Higuita says it was a mistake as big as a house. In 1993, he'd be imprisoned for 7 months for being paid to deliver ransom money between 2 drug barons. 5 years later, he would invent the scorpion kick when he could have just caught it. In 2004, he tested positive for cocaine. And in 2005, he appeared on the reality TV program La Isla de la Famosa, una aventura pirata.
The island of the famous pirate adventure.
Is exactly right, yes.
See, I do speak some Spanish. It's just You keep finding really obscure words.
Doesn't he also have quite horrifying plastic surgery now, Rene Higuita?
Yeah. He looks almost completely different.
I believe at one point he started breeding alligators, but I don't know if I've just watched enough Bond films that seems like a thing that Rene Higuita would do.
Anyway, Cameroon are the first African nation to win a World Cup knockout game and the first African nation to reach a World Cup quarter-final. Thomas Skurave, who has the most fabulous mullet at this World Cup, and bear in mind, Chris Waddle was at this World Cup. He scores a hat-trick of headers as the Czechs beat Costa Rica 4-1. Lubos Kibik gets their other goal, and 17 years later, he manages Torquay United.
The thing with the Czechs, they're one of those teams, a bit like Hungary, sort of like Sweden, that you forget have a very good international football pedigree. Czechoslovakia have won 1 European Championship, famously with a Panenka penalty, but a couple of things go their way, and they've got a couple more trophies, including a World Cup to their name.
They've won 2 games here by an aggregate score of 9-2. I mean, admittedly against the United States and Costa Rica.
Yeah. In the American team, Casey Keller was one of the substitute goalkeepers, and at points when he lived in Germany, lived in a 1,000-year-old castle.
Because he was living out a real-life Wolfenstein fantasy.
Hopefully his middle name's not also a K. If you've got the initials KKK, you're living in a 1,000-year-old German castle. That is...
I can exclusively reveal that Casey Keller's middle name starts with a C.
Oh!
But I can also reveal that Wikipedia doesn't say what it is, so we can only assume that it's... It is his first of 4 World Cups, Casey Keller. In 1998, the US beat Brazil 1-0, and Romario says of Keller, that is the best performance by a goalkeeper I have ever seen. Because of his performance against Brazil in that game, synth pop band Barcelona composed the song Casey Keller in his honour.
And that song was then covered by Freddie Mercury and Montserrat Cabal as a B-side to Barcelona.
The Costa Rican defender Mauricio Montero, nicknamed El Chunche,
The Chunky?
The Thing.
Ooh.
But because he looks like the Thing from Fantastic Four, he had a personal motto, Chalas las nalgas.
No.
Bust your buttocks.
It's not as good as unmotherfuckerize yourself, is it?
Please listen to 1982 to find out what that means. The 2014 film Italia 90 centres around 5 players from the Costa Rican World Cup squad as they prepare for the tournament. It has an IMDb rating of 6.9. Argentina beat Brazil 1-0 in a game that should have been better.
It would come to light later on that Branco had been offered water spiked with tranquilizers by Maradona during half-time, just to slow him down in the second half. And everyone said that this was an obvious lie and was completely discredited for about 10 to 15 years until Maradona went, Oh, that. Yeah, I did that.
On like a television chat show as well.
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
it?
It was just, he sat there on Wogan's Argentinian equivalent being like, oh, yeah, I remember doing that. Yeah, funny, wasn't it?
And Argentina sort of got away with one there. Well, they do on several occasions in this World Cup because Brazil hit the post 2 times, 3 times.
Brazil should have won it, but it's won by Claudio Caniggia scoring with 9 minutes to go after a trademark Maradona run and pass.
Yeah,
Maradona once
goal.
celebrated a goal by kissing Caniggia full on the lips. Like properly, you may now kiss the winger.
I
To the point-
imagine he is an intense lover.
Yeah. Claudio Caniggia's wife once said, "At times, I think Diego is in love with my husband. I think it's the long hair and big muscles." The Brazil squad includes Carlos Moza, who misses the 1994 World Cup with jaundice,
Wow.
which would have meant he just totally blended in with their kit. Bismarck, their midfielder, and he is named after Otto von Bismarck.
I presume that Bismarck sort of played in the middle and he really unified the whole team. But his playing contract was labyrinthine.
And Tita, who I think might be the first Mormon to play in a World Cup. Not 100% sure on that, but it's the first one I know about. Okay, now into a spicy game. It's West Germany versus the Netherlands.
I remember this really clearly. I don't remember any of the football from this. I remember one specific bit because it just baffled me as a kid. It's where Rudi Völler gets spat on by Frank Rijkaard. It's the bit where he doesn't notice it's there and it's just there in his throw.
The two of them are having run-ins the whole game to this point. Rijkaard hacks down Rudi Völler and then is booked for doing it, and quite rightly. As Rijkaard runs away, he turns and spits on the back of Voller's mullet.
And it's a real flob.
It's like Beano-esque.
As the Americans would say, he hacked a loogie. So Voller protests, "I've just been spat on," and the referee sympathetically books him. Right? So Rudi Völler has been booked for nothing, for being the victim of a spit and run. A minute later, Rudi Völler goes to challenge for the ball with Hans van Broeklyn, but just as he's about to get there, he pulls out of the challenge. You can see it on the video. He's going to get the ball, and then he sees that he can't get the ball, and he tries to stop. But Rijkaard just runs over to him, shoves him, shouts in his face, and the referee sends off both of them.
I mean, I don't know much about Rudi Völler, but from having had him in probably an all-stars team on Pro Evolution Soccer, he doesn't strike me as the most sympathetic footballer, but he is such a hapless bystander here, isn't he?
It's absolutely ridiculous. And as they are running off the pitch, having been sent off, Rijkaard turns around and spits on his mullet again. Rijkaard is nicknamed Llama by the German press. To his credit, he later apologises to Rudi Völler, and Rudi Völler accepts because by all reports, Rudi Völler is actually a really nice bloke.
I'm just projecting a lot of Indiana Jones relationship with the Germans.
Yeah, as we talked about in the last podcast, his nickname is Aunt Kathy.
Is that because he looks like your mum's friend, Aunt Kathy, who comes over for 11s?
Yeah, the one with the moustache. Yeah. Klinsmann is now up front on his own and pulls one of the great World Cup performances. He runs the Dutch defence absolutely ragged and is finally rewarded with a goal. Andy Bramer adds a second before Ronald Koeman converts a late penalty. Ronald Koeman claims to be the highest scoring defender of all time. There's no real way to check that.
That's tricky, but then you've got some people like, I don't know the stats, but like John Charles, who started off as a defender and then turned into a striker, but could also play centre-back if you wanted him to.
Dion Dublin was a centre-half for a little bit. But the European champions and one of the favourites for the World Cup are out.
Yeah.
The Netherlands, coached by Leo Beenhakker, which sounds like a euphemism for female masturbation.
Actually, the
yes,
bean hacker is what vegan All Blacks do at the start of a rugby match.
Yes, that's much nicer. That's a much nicer. Apparently, he loved cigars and was nicknamed Don Leo. Also in the squad, the only time he ever appears at the World Cup and he scores 0 goals is Marco van Basten, the 3-time Ballon d'Or winner. Marco van Basten records a song with Frank Rijkaard that appears to be a Who Can Sing the Worst competition.
Ik sta hier in het zonnetje, niks punten delen.
Ireland-Romania is a tedious 0-0 draw that goes to penalties. Ireland are the first team to draw 4 games in a row at a World Cup.
That just shouldn't be allowed. You shouldn't get through.
As we're going to talk about a bit more later, like England, much as I adore some members of the team, and particularly, obviously, the manager, who is my fantasy granddad, England's run to the semi-finals is ugly and clunky as shit. Just the thought of England and Ireland somehow bimbling through to the semi-finals, it would have been too much.
Jack Charlton lets the players decide who's going to take the penalties and in what order.
Wow.
He goes up to them and goes, "You lot sort it out amongst yourselves. Nothing to do with it. You figure it out." After Daniel Timofte's penalty is saved by Pat Bonner, David O'Leary steps up and everyone goes, "Really? That guy?" But the future Leeds and Villa manager scores to send Ireland through.
Daniel Timofte opened a bar in his hometown in Romania called Penalty, because he knows what he's about. He's just like, all right, if I'm going to get abuse for this, I might as well make some money from it.
Silvio Lung, the Romanian goalkeeper, looks like a chuckle brother. Both his sons have played in goal for Romania.
Oh, that's impressive.
Both of them, Barry and Paul.
Yeah, but obviously, thank goodness the back pass rule has been outlawed. It'll just be to me, to you.
Yeah. Also in the Romanian squad, Danut Lupu, who played football and ice hockey simultaneously until the age of 14, which must have been fairly tiring and confusing.
Sorry, simultaneously, you're not allowed onto the pitch in skates and with a stick.
One skate, one set of studs. It was the worst of both worlds.
When Dynamo Bucharest played against Dundee United in the 1989 European Cup Winners' Cup, he was arrested for shoplifting. While playing for Panathinaikos in 1991, he was jailed for 10 weeks for being the leader of a gang of car thieves. And in 2005, he was caught at Bucharest airport with €79,000 stashed in shoeboxes.
I got a lot of time for this guy.
Emil Sandoy, their centre-back. You can watch this on YouTube. I recommend you look it up. In a Romanian second division game, he was managing Argis Patesti on the touchline when he tripped an opposition player running down the line. He just sticks his leg out and the guy goes flying. And because everything he touches turns to goals, Schillaci scores a brilliant first-touch lob from outside the box as Italy beats Uruguay 2-0. Aldo Serena scores the second on his 30th birthday. Yugoslavia beats Spain 2-1 after extra time. Dragan Stojkovic scores 2 brilliant goals that no one ever talks about. The first one is up there with Pele versus Sweden, easily.
Anyone with the first name Dragan is just a badass immediately.
Spain's squad includes Quique Sanchez Flores, who is one of 1 billion people to have managed Watford.
It's that old Andy Warhol quote, in the future everyone will be famous for 15 minutes for managing Watford.
Yeah, well, it's going to be jury duty soon.
To Bologna! Belgium hit the post twice, and John Barnes has a perfectly good goal disallowed for offside. And how different things would have been had that goal stood. What do you remember about the England-Belgium game, Ben?
I'm fairly certain I was only aware of it the next day. Because I had a World Cup chart that now I look back, I think I filled it in fairly fastidiously, mostly because, spoiler alert, when we lost, I have a memory of very determinedly going in my pyjamas and dressing gown and filling it in whilst crying. It's like, really sad. But protocol must win out. I mean, no, I don't remember the game at all. Having watched it back, some just stunning play by Gaza. He's just an absolute menace. What I didn't realise is the David Platt backstory is that he's only in there because Brian Robson has to go home injured. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, Platt was in the squad, but Brian Robson was out knackered in the Holland game, out for the tournament, and Platt comes off the bench in this game. So in the last minute of extra time, 36-year-old Eric Gerrits, the Lion of Flanders, playing in his third World Cup, brings down Gascoigne, who chips the free kick into the Belgian penalty area, and David Platt of Aston Villa volleys the winner.
And one of the great pieces of commentary.
Chipped in and volleyed in, and it's there by David Platt. England have done it in the last minute of extra time.
It's such an un-English-like finish, isn't it?
Yeah, he was just a class above.
I mean, I remember him going off to play for Bari and Sampdoria and Juve as well, or have I made that last one up?
That's correct.
And as a kid going, you can do that? You can be English and that's allowed?
It was the first of David Platt's 27 England goals, which all happened in a fairly barren time for the England national team. He was the 1990 PFA Player of the Year. He'd be the first England footballer on the cover of a FIFA video game. He is the first Aston Villa player to score an England World Cup goal.
It's a shame that he came to prominence during a real barren period, because imagine Platt sort of playing with the golden, tainted generation of the turn of the century.
Yeah, he was exactly the kind of player that we were sort of missing as well at that point. But John Barnes' goal, which was a perfectly good goal, is given. None of this happens. I remember watching the Belgium-England game with my entire family in the front room. My mom didn't like football at all, but she really got into this World Cup. And we were all watching it, and it was super, super tense. And when Platt scored that winner as well, because David Platt lived on the same housing estate that we did, we all just went absolutely mental in our front room. And I remember distinctly our cat shitting himself and running away.
Yeah, I think
Actually shitting himself, doing a Gary Lineker.
No. We should have called him that. To the quarterfinals. Yugoslavia have a Refik Sabanadzovic sent off for fouling Maradona. 3 years earlier, Sabanadzovic was elbowed in the head during a league game and went into a coma for 3 days.
Jeez.
Jose Burachaga has a late goal disallowed for some reason, don't know why. And in the penalty shootout, Stojkovic hits the bar, Troglio hits the post, and 3 others are saved as Argentina win 3-2. Italy-Ireland. Italy win 1-0, thanks to a Toto Schillaci goal, who pounces on a Pat Bonner error, and Ireland are out in the quarterfinals, having scored 2 goals and not won a game. Scotland of the 70s and 80s hate you. They haven't won a game and scored 2 goals and got to the quarterfinals. Scotland would win games, score about 7 and be knocked out.
I don't want to suggest that luck of the Irish is in any way anything other than a tired old cliche, but their run in 1990 is making it difficult to refute.
And then strut around like you've won the whole bloody thing.
Again,
Instead of stinking the place out, which is what they did.
it was until she was in her teens, my Irish ex-girlfriend, till she found out that Ireland didn't win the 1990 World Cup, because that was the way it's talked about back there.
Oh, yeah. As I say to my Irish co-host on my podcast, 1990 is the year that modern Irish history began.
Which player committed the most fouls at the 1990 World Cup?
I know this. It's Mick McCarthy. He wasn't booked. Mick McCarthy also gave one of my favourite quotes. He was talking about when he used to manage Millwall, and he said, I went to Millwall, a club with a chip on both its shoulders.
I can't get over how much Mick McCarthy looks like a Muppet newsreader.
It's Sam the Eagle.
He's got Sam the Eagle eyebrows, but it's the fact that his head looks like it hinges at the jaw. I mean, obviously all our jaws are hinges, but like the whole top of his head would just fall backwards and open if it wasn't stopped.
In 1991, Mick McCarthy released a cover of Did You Ever with Linda Martin.
It's bad.
Well, I just wonder, did you ever?
All the time.
Kevin Moran is in the squad, also a Gaelic footballer. He's the first player to be sent off in an FA Cup final in 1985. His brother Ray is a knee specialist who once operated on John Bon Jovi.
A knee specialist is also a Geordie who's very humble about their specialism.
Ronnie Whelan, midfielder who played for the brilliant Liverpool team of the late 80s. He only played 38 minutes at this World Cup and 16 minutes in 1994. He only played that amount of time for Ireland at a World Cup because, of course, he was a midfielder.
You don't need it if you're bypassing everything with Pat Bonner kicks. That's all you do.
He wasn't very good at watching the ball sail over his head. Also in the squad, Chris Houghton, who used to write a column for the Workers' Revolutionary Party newspaper in the 70s.
No way. Yes, please.
He's such a good man. There's a friend of mine who has interviewed him and says that Chris Houghton just emanates this sense of calm dignity in exactly the way that you'd imagine.
And Bernie Slaven is in the squad.
Was he in there?
Yeah. He once wrote to 54 football clubs to apply for the position of footballer.
Oh, bless his cotton socks.
Yeah. Middlesbrough said, all right, apparently, according to Tony Cascarino, who roomed with him at Italia 90, Bernie Slaven would phone his dog every day and make dog noises down the phone. In 1999, he bet radio presenter Ali Brownlee that Middlesbrough wouldn't beat Man United, and if they did, he'd bare his bum in Bin's department store window. Guess what happened?
They did not win.
No, they did win, so he had to do it.
Oh, no.
Yep. He painted 3-2, the score in the game, on his cheeks. So, of course, it looked like 302.
Oh, James Cook, please. Surely more like 3.2.
Yeah. He did not call either of his two autobiographies Slaven Away. West Germany beat Czechoslovakia through a Lothar Matthäus penalty. Lubomir Moravcik is sent off for volleying his own boot.
Oh, wow.
His boot comes off and he just volleys it, and the referee says,
Sorry.
No.
He's sent off for doing trick shots.
Yeah. Yeah. The referee in this game was Helmut Kohl.
Not that one or that one?
No, not the Chancellor of Germany, Paul. No. But
I'm just checking. We've had enough weird things happen.
An Austrian referee who happened to have the same name as the then Chancellor of Germany. If you were Czechoslovakia and you saw who was refereeing the game, wouldn't you go, hang on a minute?
This seems unfair.
Yeah, and who's keeping the line? Oh, is it Angela Merkel? Well, I smell shenanigans.
Imagine in the England-USA game this year, they go, and the referee is Joe Biden. Or depending on how he is, Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that Kohl, as in Helmut Kohl, is the German word for cabbage.
Ah, nice.
Helmut cabbage.
World War I German helmets would have been perfect to keep cabbage on.
The Czechoslovakia squad included Vladimir Weiss, whose dad, Vladimir Weiss, had won an Olympic silver playing football for Czechoslovakia, and his son, Vladimir Weiss, was in the Slovakian squad in 2010.
Nice.
Weiss.
Nice.
And Jan Stejskel, who after this World Cup gets signed by QPR and is one of only 13 foreign players to play the opening weekend of the Premier League. He's a qualified mechanic and mayor of Giovanni in Czechia. England-Cameroon.
I'm going to say this is the most fun game of the entire tournament.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. And it's fun because Cameroon should win.
Absolutely. They really should.
They batter England in this for large portions of the game. And England, it's mainly thanks to Peter Shilton, who puts in...
It leaves a bitter taste to have to give that Brexiteering thunk of wood any credit, but yes.
When you see what Germany do to him, you can see why he wants to be separated from the continent.
That is reasonable. The alternate timeline where Cameroon beat Germany in the semi-final and then the match against Argentina in the final ends up as a five-a-side because so many players get sent off.
Well, David Platt scores again as England take a half-time lead against Cameroon, who, despite having 4 players missing through suspension, are having all the chances. At half-time, they bring on Roger Miller, and that changes things up a little bit.
In my head, there's a Cameroonian band who play In the Mood every time he gets the ball.
On the hour, he's fouled by Gascoigne, and Emmanuel Koundé scores from the spot. He'd also scored the winner in the 1988 AFCON final. 5 minutes later, Roger Miller assists fellow sub Eugene Ikeke as Cameroon deservedly take the lead. And I remember watching this at home and just thinking, oh God, we're going to lose? We're going to lose this? With 7 minutes remaining, Gary Lineker turns in the box and is fouled.
I agree with that punctuation.
I mean, I think technically it is a foul, but he plays for it. Let's say that.
Yeah.
He, as the basketball players say, he draws the foul.
Gary Lineker was one of the best of putting it slightly past the goalkeeper's arms and letting the arms do all of the work. Same with Michael Owen years later. Just had the ability to knock it round a keeper and then let the keeper take you out.
But as we will get on to, Michael Owen is just a diver.
And lacking all of Gary Lineker's charm.
It is England's first penalty for 53 matches.
In any match?
Yeah, they hadn't had a penalty for 53 games. And Lineker scores it. In extra time, Gascoigne threads a through ball to Lineker, who once again plays for the foul around Nkono in goal, and then scores the penalty. And England win 3-2 and are jamily through to the semi-finals for the first time since 1966.
Woo!
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about it. Cameroon won. Are we the baddies? Yeah, in this game, we are the baddies.
It is one of those ones where you go, this is why English actors are so often the Hollywood villains. And it's not just because we've got the best accents for it.
I mean, you say that is the reason why we're the villains. I don't think there are Americans watching Mark Strong chew the scenery again and go, oh, it's because those plucky Cameroonians.
This will play well in West Africa.
Yeah.
If it's any consolation, Cameroon's performance at the World Cup means that in 1994, Africa get an extra place.
That's good.
Africa had to fight for every place they've got at the World Cup at this point.
Yeah. They at one point had a guarantee of 0 places.
Thomas Nkono, the Cameroonian goalkeeper, he played in 82 and he'd be the third choice in 94. In 2002, as assistant coach of Cameroon, he was arrested by Malian police for black magic before an AFCON semi-final that Cameroon won 3-0. He was dragged onto the pitch before the game, handcuffed and led away.
Wow.
Do you know what? I think I'd prefer that to like the unveiling of a new signing. Just, if, God, I don't know, Emil Kraft was accused of black magic. Although, to be fair, with Newcastle United's new owners, that's not too far-fetched, is it? Just accused of heresy and beheaded.
Some sacrifices need to be made. Not like that.
Nkono inspired Gianluigi Buffon to become a goalkeeper.
Oh.
Buffon's son's middle name is Thomas as a tribute. Hey, have you ever played a board game? You have? Then you'll love my book, 101 Board Games to Play Before You Die. I look at the board games that we've loved, hated, and thrown across the room in a fit of rage. I'll tell you which classic games are not worth the time and emotional torment, and which games you should be playing instead, as well as giving you advice on how to make your dinner parties more tolerable and how to pimp your Scrabble. The perfect gift for your nerdy friend, it's available from 101boardgames.com. That's 101boardgames.com. Into the semi-finals.
Well, do you know what? It's been lovely appearing on this podcast, gentlemen, but I very much think it's time for me to pop off now.
4 of the last 5 world champions are here. For a record 5th consecutive World Cup, Argentina play Italy. Italy, having not conceded a goal and won every game, playing them all in Rome, now find themselves in Naples, where Diego Maradona lives and is a hero.
That stadium in Naples is now named the Diego Maradona Stadium, which might be the first time a player has ever played a game at the World Cup in a stadium that was then named after them.
I think it might be, yes, I think you're right.
Yeah.
How is this played out? Is this just poor scheduling? Surely they should have ended up in Rome.
It's their World Cup. They can do what they want. They could have stayed in Rome, but they didn't. Also, Roberto Baggio, the best player, doesn't start.
Well, under every ponytail is a horse's arse. That's the old saying.
Italy take the lead through
Toto Schillaci.
Yes, his 5th goal of the tournament. And then in the second half, Italy concede for the first time in 11 games as Caniggia heads in. Then Caniggia gets booked for handball, meaning he's going to miss the final, but he doesn't cry. And Ricardo Gusti of Argentina is sent off. The first period of extra time lasts for 23 minutes. Why?
Because of laziness.
What?
Watch breaks.
Yeah.
No, the referee forgets to check his watch.
I'm sorry. That
so
sounds
deeply into it.
So suspicious.
Doesn't it? So, to penalties. Roberto Donadoni and Aldo Serena both miss, meaning Maradona can score the winning penalty.
And that's after missing a penalty against Yugoslavia, isn't it?
Oh, yes, he did. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And he scores it. And Argentina are in their 3rd final in 4 World Cups, having scored 5 goals in 6 games.
Wow.
Right. Should we talk about the other semi-final?
Yeah, let's do it.
Fine.
I don't know why. It's a brilliant game.
It is objectively a brilliant game, but it feels like, like therapists will say that most of what they do is unraveling childhood trauma. And I feel like for a good percentage of the male population of England, this is like one of the defining ones. Just so you know, my wife has entered the kitchen to get a biscuit, and I said that on the way out, and she is looking at me askance. You'd understand if your nation had ever got past the group stages.
Taking his life in his hands.
James, just hit the bell for the first divorce live on the podcast.
It's all right. She doesn't care about football.
5 years after this, I was living in a student halls of residence, and there were Germans in there, and I got on with them quite well because it turns out most Germans are lovely. I remember going out drinking with them and then talking about how this game was the real final. Much in the same way that throwing your shoes over the pub is the real quiz. So it's 0-0 at half-time. England have played really well because Germany have been amazing in the groups and then efficient in the knockouts. Just after half-time, Germany get a free kick outside the box. They give it to Bremer, who's a free kick specialist. Paul Parker breaks the wall as the Germans tap it to Bremer. And in one of the biggest freak goals of all time, it hits Parker's ankle, balloons up in the air, and once again, Peter Shilton is out-jumped by something he should have easily dealt with.
It's
just
an upsetting goal.
And it continues the tradition of unlikely fullbacks scoring in World Cup semi-finals.
Yes.
Both Bremer and Parker.
God, yes, of course.
And it was just so deflating. But England come again, and brilliantly, Paul Parker gets the assist for Lineker's goal. It's Gary Lineker's longest range World Cup goal.
They were appealing for offside, the Germans, and they're in trouble. Augenthaler couldn't do it. Lineker probably could. And England have equalised. It's Gary Lineker. The ace marksman keeps England in the World Cup.
It's a terrific goal as well. It is possibly the most cushioned use of the thigh I've ever seen. It's almost like he traps the ball on his thigh and carries it around the defender still on his thigh, like a butler with a red velvet cushion.
And then England become the first team at a World Cup to play extra time in 3 consecutive matches.
It's a good job we didn't get to the final. We'd have been knackered.
They'd have found something, I think. So extra time. There's a key moment in the history of English football culture in this extra time, isn't there? That's right. Chris Waddle hits the post.
But obviously, as both an England and former Newcastle fan, I am filled with painful regret at the Nellies, possiblies and maybes. I remember the 1998 FA Cup final where Newcastle played against Arsenal. And 1-0 down in the second half, Alan Shearer thumped the post. What I most remember about that game is I, as a 15-year-old, was hanging out at Hippie Green in Newcastle with, strangely, all the goths. And a goth girl said, "Oh, do you want to watch the match? Come back to my granddad and nana's house." We went back there and she removed her goth makeup and came back with a Newcastle top on, thus removing one black and white fashion and moving to another black and white one.
Just more regimented. This.
Yes. I completely forgot Waddle hit the post. And indeed that Buchwald for Germany hits the post as well.
And
yes,
Klinsmann has 2 absolute on a platter chances that you'd expect him to bury.
The whole game is 2 teams trying to beat each other, and it's brilliant, and it doesn't let up for the entirety of the 120 minutes. This was neither of the teams was playing for penalties. Both teams were trying to win, and that's what makes it a really good game. Are we going to talk about it?
I mean, we have to now. We've been forced to. We're here.
Paul Gascoigne is booked for the second time in the tournament in extra time, which means by the rules of the World Cup at the time that he will miss the final if England make it, and he bursts into tears.
He has actually, Gascoigne, got a yellow card now. Oh dear me. He's going to be out of the final if England get there. And here is a moment that almost brings tears to his eyes.
Poor guy. The thing with Gaza, a man who lived in the moment, a genius, and obviously an instinctive, brilliant footballer, but he's one of these people who was like that for virtually every sport. So apparently when the England players played darts, Gaza was only allowed to play if the dart started with the point of the dart on his nose, and he had to flick it at the board. Whenever he played snooker, he had to hold the cue backwards, and whenever they did playing penalties, Gaza had to face away from the goal and was only allowed to backheel it because he was just too good.
Danny Baker, in his autobiography, said he went round to his house, or the house that he grew up in, that his parents still lived, and they had hundreds of trophies for things like cricket and javelin that he just tried it once, was amazing at, and went, all right, cool. had quite a traumatic childhood. He accidentally got a child killed when he was very young, which is
gosh, I never knew that.
like that really weighed heavily on his mind for years.
Gaza. He's such a complex figure, like, because obviously he's done bad things.
Also, just some quite misguided things where you just go, like, turning up to Raoul Moat is just one of those things where you just go, like, that's mental, but also like you're doing it from a nice place, but for a man who has killed 2 people. Like,
he showed up with a fishing rod and some chicken, didn't he, to try and talk Raoul Moat down.
Someone stuck a microphone in his face and he just went, "Have you got anything to say to your fans in Norway?" And he just went, "Yeah, off Norway."
Hey, that didn't end well, did it? More about which in the next episode. This is the only time he ever plays in the World Cup. Obviously, England miss out in 90. In 98, he plays in the qualifying and plays really well and works really hard to try and get into Hoddle's squad. Glenn Hoddle, who mysteriously, although playing really well for Monaco, is overlooked for the 1990 World Cup squad in favour of Paul Gascoigne, decides not to take Paul Gascoigne to the 1998 World Cup. And Gascoigne then famously trashes a hotel room.
The other thing with Gaz, because probably really my first real football memories of watching on the telly is the Arsenal Spurs Cup final in 91. Semi-final, and then the Cup final against Forest, where he knackers his knee. And it's I don't know the full story of it, but basically, other than signing for Lazio, he was meant to sign for Man United, as I understand it.
That was when he left Newcastle. He had a choice between Manchester United and Tottenham. And you do think how differently things would have turned out if someone like Alex Ferguson had got hold of him.
Imagine. Honestly, that breaks my heart.
In this World Cup, they do a thing where they put the teams on TV, where they've got a clip of each player and they mouth their name as the caption comes up. There's no sound, it's just them mouthing it. Famously, Paul Gascoigne mouths f***ing wanker.
It's unlike his footballing skills, it's Route 1, but it's very funny.
Paul John Gascoigne, do you know how he's called that?
Because Ringo wasn't allowed to be in the...
He's the original Geordie PJ.
Yeah.
He's named after the Beatles.
Yeah, he's named after Paul McCartney and John Lennon.
Ah, nice.
Oh my God, that makes me love him even more.
Yeah, and just, and he went on to have a pop career. Had a number 2 hit with Fog on the Tyne. Fog on the Tyne is all mine, all mine. Fog on the Tyne is all mine.
Come on! Have you ever listened to his follow-up single, Geordie Boy? It's not great, but the music video is filmed for about 12 pence. And it's him doing a rap, and then he's in the back of a taxi and just unzipping and zipping up a tracksuit top with nothing underneath.
It was like 1990s version of OnlyFans.
Anyway, listen, you're going to say this is penalty shootout. Jimmy are very efficient. Stuart Pearce and Chris Waddle break our hearts. The end. Right?
We should talk about the most famous bit of lip reading in the history of English football.
Oh, yeah.
Where Gary Lineker goes up to the crying Gascoigne, turns to the bench, points to his eyes and mouths the words, "Have a word with him." He didn't know he was going to be on camera when that happened, but it's almost as iconic as Gascoigne's tears. Incredibly, despite the fact that England have still got a sub to use, Gascoigne stays on the pitch for the rest of the game. Obviously, hindsight is amazing, but do you know who England's third choice goalkeeper was in this World Cup?
Dave Besant.
That's right, Dave Besant, who had saved a penalty in the 1988 FA Cup final. It wouldn't have been allowed because the rules were different then, because they'd named Chris Woods as the sub-goalkeeper. But had they named Dave Besant as the sub-goalkeeper, with one substitute to go in the 120th minute, Bobby Robson could have done a major mind game on the Germans and just brought on Dave Besant for the penalty shootout.
Imagine.
Because Shilton was a great keeper, but he was like, that was one area of his game that he was not strong at.
Whereas Besant was a specialist.
And Dave Besant was 4 inches taller.
And a baller. And he had a 6'4" Impala.
There is a slight flaw in my Dave Besant plan, which was that in 1993 he dropped a bottle of salad cream on his foot and had to miss 8 weeks of the season. So it might have backfired hideously.
The worst thing with this is, you'll have seen it, I think it was a programme all about Sir Bobby, and there's a bit, this is obviously 20 years later, where Gary Lineker is interviewing him in changing rooms, and Bobby just turns to him and goes, "We should have won it, Gary. We should have won it, and then we'd have beaten the Argentinians in the final." And you can see Gary Lineker struggling to hold it together.
Should have won it. Should have won it.
As you say, the usually incredibly reliable penalty taker Stuart Pearce has his saved by Bodo Illner, and then Chris Waddle decides to kick the ball to the moon.
Yeah, that
Still
ball
not landed.
just overtaken Voyager 2.
And West Germany ensure a World Cup final rematch, a repeat of the 1986 World Cup. It is their 6th final overall, their 5th in 7 tournaments, and their 3rd in a row.
God, it must be boring being a German football fan.
They've only got to 2 finals since, though.
Yeah. And won one of them.
Third place playoff comes to life with 20 minutes to go when Baggio puts Italy in front. David Platt equalises before Italy get a penalty. Their penalty taker is Roberto Baggio, but he says, no, I'm going to give the ball to
Schillaci.
so that he can be the Golden Boot winner. And takes the penalty. And
Roberto Baggio is such a nice man.
Well, he is and he isn't, as we will get into in the next episode.
Okay.
It is Peter Shilton's 125th and final England appearance.
The mistake for the first goal is so embarrassing. It's like he suddenly turns into a dad trying to chase a ping pong ball across the living room.
Yeah.
After the semi-final, where they were all sat in the dressing room, Peter Shilton was like, "Oh lads, if you put some of those in the net, we'd have been in the final." And Gazza just goes, "Or you could have saved some."
Yep.
In that England squad, Terry Butcher in his 3rd World Cup. Born in...
Oh, it's something mad like Singapore, isn't it?
It's Singapore. Born in Singapore.
Yeah.
Very good.
He likes being covered in his own blood. He once kicked a referee's door off its hinges. He's friends with Iron Maiden, and his cousin is...
It's Pat Nevin.
Pat Nevin.
Can you think of 2 less likely people to be...
Chris Waddle, often mentioned in the Fast Show.
Mi stutucanthos e porthe Chris Waddle.
Foolishly cuts off his mullet prior to the semi-final like a modern-day Samson.
Oh, is that it? No, don't do it. Put the scissors down.
Peter Shilton was a professional footballer before England won the World Cup.
Wow.
He hadn't played a World Cup game until he was 32 and ended up playing 17 of them.
Wow.
God almighty.
He is the joint record holder of 10 clean sheets at the World Cup with Fabian Barthez. He played more games of football than anyone else, 1,390. He has more England caps than anyone else with 125. He scored 1 goal in his career, and it happened 6 months in.
I'd love the alternative timeline where he's the Joey-Louis Chilavert of English football.
He retired in 1997. In 1986, a computer game was released called Peter Shilton's Handball Maradona.
I presume that was released post-World Cup, because if that was released in, January 1986, that would be quite the prediction.
Stuart Pearce, psycho, managed the GB Olympic team in 2012. In his first match as player-manager of Nottingham Forest, he forgot to include a goalkeeper in the starting 11 until his wife pointed it out.
What you hire an assistant manager for?
He was a trainee electrician when he started it. When he was asked about the pressure of football, he went, "Oh no, my electrician's exams were much more difficult." And he used to go to punk gigs in his pyjamas.
He's a visible crowd member in the artwork of the album God's Lonely Men by the Lurkers, and he's in a Stranglers video.
It's him in a black suit just mouthing along to the words, and it's really aggressive.
He scored 99 goals in his career, and in the last minute of his final game, missed a penalty.
Oh, Donald Bradmaning it.
He is the 3rd oldest outfield player to play for England behind Stanley Matthews and Leslie Compton. Who was backup left back that got a game in the 3rd place playoff because Stuart Pearce didn't want to play?
Tony Dorigo.
That's right, born in Melbourne, Australia. His dad was Italian. He was called up to play for Australia during the qualifiers in 1986, but his boss at Villa, Tony Barton, said, "No, you can't go."
It is simply too far.
And the FA said, if you wait another year and get your citizenship, you can play for England. Italy had Giuseppe Bergomi, their captain, nicknamed Lo Zio, which means the uncle, because he had bushy eyebrows, like an uncle. Carlo Ancelotti.
Oh, yeah.
Was in the Italian squad. Don Carlo. His autobiography is called Preferisco la Coppa, which means I prefer the cup, because Coppa means cup in Italian, but it is also a type of cured cold pork meat.
It's delicious.
Has a blink and you'll miss it cameo in Star Trek Beyond.
Wow.
He's a Trekkie, and he asked if he could be in it, and they went, all right.
Make it so, number one.
The final.
One of the dullest games of all time.
Easily the worst World Cup final to date.
The whole thing that we were talking about of England, Germany, both teams going out to win. This was two teams going out to not lose. And it is stultifyingly boring, even on the highlights, which are 4 minutes long. Have you wasted my time?
The only interesting bit is the astonishing amount of violence brought by the Argentinian team, particularly against the referee.
Argentina have got 4 players suspended, including probably their best player at this World Cup, Claudio Caniggia. The Uruguayan referee Edgardo Codosol's dad, Jose, had refereed at the 1966 World Cup. When the Italian crowd boo the Argentinian national anthem at the start of the game, Maradona can clearly be seen shouting "sons of bitches" over and over again. Proper furious. Pedro Monzon becomes the first player to be sent off in a World Cup final for fouling Klinsmann, who somehow lands on a mini trampoline based on how high he throws himself in the air afterwards. West Germany get a penalty with 7 minutes to go after Roberto Sensini fouls Voller. It takes 3 minutes for the penalty to be taken, such as the Argentinian protest. And Bremer is spat on while he waits to take it.
Ugh.
But thankfully he scores it, saving us all extra time.
And is that the goal that wins the World Cup? Andy Bremer.
The only other penalty he'd taken for West Germany during a game, so not a shootout, had been saved by Peter Shilton in a friendly in 1986.
What's the use of that, Shilts?
There's still time for Dazzotti to become the second player to be sent off in a World Cup final for grabbing Johan Kohler around the face. But eventually, and thankfully, it just ends. Maradona cries, but no one feels sorry for him. He's been marked out of the game by Guido Buchwald, who earns the nickname Diego because of it.
I have claimed your name now, little man.
Yeah.
Bodo Illgner becomes the first goalkeeper to keep a clean sheet in a World Cup final. He retired from international football after the 94 World Cup, aged just 27. Surely no final can be this bad again, can it? Just a little throw ahead to the next one. West Germany are champions, having scored 3 goals in their final 3 games, 2 penalties and a deflected free kick.
Ugh.
And then West Germany retire as champions. Lothar Matthäus, the captain, he picks up the trophy. It's his 3rd of his 5 World Cups, an outfield player record. 25 games he plays at World Cups, which is also a record. He's the most capped German, 150, 83 for West Germany. Maradona said he was the best rival he ever played against. He came out of retirement in 2018 at age 57 to play 50 minutes for FC Herzogenaurach, who he started his career with. He married 5 times. His latest is 26 years younger than he is. They are now divorced.
Lothar Matthäus, the Leonardo DiCaprio of German football.
He once guest starred in Alarm for Cobra Elf, Die Autobahnpolizei, which is basically the German Chips. Jürgen Klinsmann, their forward, would score 11 goals at World Cups. Some say he dove for the sending off, but he says he got a 15-centimetre gash on his shin. Jürgen Klinsmann can fly a helicopter.
When he was at Tottenham, they all the other players had flash cars, and they all had like BMWs and Mercs and Porsches and stuff. And he had a 3-door Volkswagen.
Famously, he gave lots of money to Greenpeace. Time now to rate the 1990 World Cup in Italy in our World Cup of World Cups leaderboard, currently being led by 1986 in Mexico with 8.19. Your scores, please, for the host nation, Italy. How did they do as hosts?
The thing is, a lot of the early matches that I saw, not that full.
Actually, the attendances were really healthy compared to every other World Cup to this point, but the stadiums were massive. They're going to lose points for not playing their semi-final in Rome and inflicting the Argentina-Germany final on all of us. Innovations.
Well, the innovations came after it, and that it was so shit that they scrapped the back pass and put it up to 3 points for a win.
The reason for that is that FIFA, when they came to analyse it a year and a half later, no one could remember who actually won the final.
Controversy.
Maradona was drugging people.
I mean, it's all the sendings off. Shocks.
Cameroon beating Argentina, big shock. Ireland getting to the quarters, big shock.
England beating Cameroon in the quarters, big shock.
Costa Rica beating Sweden and Scotland. That was a shock as well. Quite a lot of shocks in this one. What is the game of the tournament, in your opinion?
England-Cameroon.
Not England-Germany in the semi-final?
No, because I don't want to talk about that anymore.
There are very few goals in the knockout stages at all. There's Baggio's against Czechoslovakia.
Kanija's goal against Brazil is good, but I'm going to go for there's one Toto Schillaci goal where he absolutely thumps it in, and it made a noise in public that I sort of regret.
The worthiness of champions West Germany.
I don't think there's a better team in there.
Italy?
So, yeah, maybe. But I don't think they'd win against other World Cup winners.
The top scorer, Toto Schillaci.
I give him loads because he literally did nothing else for Italy apart from this. He made his debut that year. He played one friendly. He went to the World Cup. He scored 6 goals. He scored one more in a European qualifier that they lost, and then he disappeared off the radar.
As a kid, he absolutely threw me into thinking that he was one of the greatest footballers of all time.
British contribution.
Yeah, there was a big contribution because the Ireland team were quite amazingly English as well, managed by an Englishman, so...
There hasn't been a World Cup since with as many British/English moon contributions since.
Wider cultural impact.
It rescued football.
Football Italia on Channel 4.
Sort of pop culture thing of the England shirt was popular. Ness and Dormer, Pavarotti.
Within 2 years, there's a Premier League, which changes everything. The thing about this World Cup is there's a lot of drama and there's a lot of stories, but the games were not good. The final category is entertainment value. I've got some stats for you here. There were 2.21 goals per game, the lowest ever. 5 0-0s, 15 1-0s, and no dead rubbers. Nearly 40% of the games have 1 goal or fewer. There were 16 red cards, double the previous record set in 1986, and afterwards they had to bring in the back pass rule and 3 points for a win. Does drama count as entertainment?
On footballing counts, it scores very low. On narrative counts, I think it scores quite high across various variables.
It's very much the World Cup equivalent of Better Call Saul. It rewards people who don't mind sitting through stuff that's slow and builds to incredibly dramatic moments. The scores are in, and I can reveal that the score for the Italy World Cup in 1990 is 6.5.
Ooh.
Which puts it in 8th place so far in the World Cup of World Cups.
Oh.
Behind 1958 Sweden, but ahead of 1974 in West Germany.
So the bit that let it down was the final and the lack of innovation.
They did very well on wider cultural impact and Toto Schillaci. How do you feel about that, Ben?
That feels about right for it. It's I would maybe put it slightly high up mid-table. It just didn't have enough footballing oomph to whack it higher up.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us on the World Cup of World Cups podcast today. Where can people find out more about you?
You are very welcome. The main place to look is my podcast, Worst Foot Forward, which is a celebration of heroic failure, where each week we talk about a world's worst something. We've talked about pirates, explorers, doors, trees, smells, restaurants. There's over 250 episodes. You can find us where you find your podcatchers. If you want to see me live, head to benvandervelde.com or my comedy club, Good Ship Comedy, which is in various places around the southeast.
Just time for a teaser ahead of the next podcast, something you need to think about. England became the first team to have 3 consecutive games go to extra time in this World Cup. It's only happened once since. When and which team? I'll give you the answer to that at the start of the next podcast, when we'll be talking about bookending penalty misses, unlikely semi-finalists, everyone in Britain suddenly finding Irish relatives, stupidly short World Cup careers, drugs, murder, elbow slams, as we go to the USA for the 1994 World Cup as the World Cup of World Cup continues. You can email us, worldcupofworldcups@gmail.com, and support us at ko-fi.com/worldcupofworldcups. I'm on Twitter at James E. Cook.
I'm at Comedy Savage.
And I'm at Ben Vandervelde.
Thank you very much for downloading. Please tell everyone you've ever met that this podcast exists. This has been the World Cup of World Cups. Until next time, ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao bella.
Shut up!